to the second video in my Madness of Publishing series. As I said in my first video, this video is going to be all about editing, the do's, the don'ts, the reason you need to edit, along with some tips to the trade. What I've noticed about a lot of aspiring authors who complete their very first novel is that they don't believe in editing, or they personally feel that editing is up to the agent and the publisher, that there's a certain group of people, editors, who will take their story and edit it for them, that it's not upon themselves to do it. That's a big no-no. You edit your own work first, and the reason why is because your agent or your publishers, they're not going to want to sit there and spend months editing something that, you could have done yourself and corrected these few simple things instead of leaving them to do it. For those of you who are watching this and are looking into self-publishing, you really need to edit and pay very close attention to it, because no one is going to be there to catch the things that you miss. Whether you are self-publishing or attorneys to agents, I'm going to put this in a perspective that you can understand. Think of a book that you read that was laced with errors, whether it be misspellings, punctuation, horrible grammar, whatever it is. Picture that book in your mind and just do this. That is why I need to edit. We've all read a book that is similar to that, you're sitting there and you're looking at it and you're wondering to yourself, how did this get published? How can they not spell that word correctly? Why is there a comma there? There should be no comma there. I like to doodle in my books, and I tend to correct things as I go along, so I do know a lot of books that have issues like that, especially in the self-publishing market, where, not saying that self-publishers are, slacking in the editing process, but they missed certain aspects of it. So this is the reason I'm going to go over some of the tips and the trades and the secrets and all of that good stuff that you're going to need to know while you're editing, whether it's going to be self-publishing or going on to an agent. So yes. The question is, how many edits do you need? Now that is entirely up to you. Again, if you are self-publishing, make sure it's more than 3 edits, because you're really going to need more than 3 to catch some of the small little things that, you wouldn't catch otherwise, but unseen eyes to this story will see. If you're turning to an agent, that is entirely up to you how many edits you want to accomplish before you send it off, but you do need more than 2 edits before you even think about it. You can edit until you're 80 years old and then decide to send it off to a publisher, and that is perfectly okay if that's what you want to do, because you're going to be changing things, you're going to have different aspects to certain things. But if you're just gonna, finish the novel and send it out, no, edit that. For me personally, I am on my final edit, which is the 4th edit to my novel Hunted, which is book 1 in the Natural Disasters trilogy. It's been a long process. I've been editing for a little over 2 months now, and it's driving me up a wall, but you gotta get it done. I personally believe that 4 edits should be enough that you can send it out happily to your agents and feel very proud and accomplished of what you've done and very confident about it. So I'm going to go over each edit and talk you through each one and a step with each one, because there are steps, unfortunately. The first edit is done by you and you alone. Nobody else sees it. When you finish your novel, you hide it away for about a week or 2. No one touches it. No one sees it, not even your own eyes. And then when 2 weeks have passed, you take it out. Still no one sees it but you, and then you begin your edit. The reason that you and you alone do the first edit is very simple. You don't want to hand it off to someone with a big embarrassing mistake. You want to be able to catch that beforehand, so that way, when people do edit your story, whether it be friends or your writing site, wherever you hand it off to, that they will read it and be like, this is actually really good. Granted, there's a few mistakes laced through here, but nothing too concerning. A prime example is with my story. I changed my main character's name about halfway through. It's a big change for something like my novel, and if you guys have Word documents, you will know that there's that find and a replace button that you can use, which I thought would have been the simplest of ways to do that. My main character's name in the beginning was Avery, and I switched it over to Aisling to give it more of a Victorian Irish feel to it. And, well, that didn't work out so well for me. I learned in my first edit. There were points when my main character, she would have the nickname Ave, which is A-V-E, and I switched it to Ash, A-S-H, and any word that had A-V-E in it, so have, would be switched to hash, and there was just a bunch of red squiggles and horrible things like that. And if I hadn't gone back and corrected that in the first edit by myself, I would have handed it off to people and they would have just shaken their heads and been like, you need to go back to grammar school. The second edit can be done by you again or by a friend of yours, but again, you should leave it about a week or two after you've completed your first edits. The reason you leave it for a period of time is so that way it's not fresh in your mind. You're not sitting there and you're not obsessing about it. The first edit, you're basically just looking for those big mistakes. The second edit is the grammar, the punctuation, and the commas. Pay attention for commas. I realize that there are two types of comma users out there. Comma happy people where there are commas everywhere, and the comma haters where there are very scarce and you're lucky to find one. It's very good to go back and find those mistakes, and while you're writing your story, you're not really paying attention to commas. You're just going with the flow of things. So in your first edit where you're not really paying attention to that, you're looking for the big mistakes. This one is the smaller mistakes, the things that, won't catch your eye quickly that you really, really have to pay attention to. The first and second edit I did by myself, and this third edit I handed it off to two of my friends whom I know will bluntly harsh with me. I also did the third edit by myself, and this one I was just working with the dialogue. I was making sure everything flowed properly, that what they were saying made sense, and that there was no jumpy parts. There was nothing where you're sitting there like, that doesn't make sense, and I would read it out loud to make sure it flowed. That's what you're going to want to do on the third edit. You're not going to be looking for commas because you did that in step 2, though you might catch a few, but you're really, really wanting to pay attention to the dialogue. You want to make sure that it's, for one, believable, and two, that it flows properly, and that whatever era you are placing your story in, whether it be historical, contemporary, or futuristic, that it makes sense and it's believable. My fourth and final edit I am doing currently by myself. I had just gotten back the 2 edits I sent off to my friends, and I'm reviewing that and comparing it to what I had already done in my third edit and seeing if we had the same thoughts. I'm almost done with that, which would be my final edit, and I'm very, very excited for that because, again, it's been like almost a 2.5-month process, and it's very excruciating, and I want to start sending this stuff out before June, but I don't think that's going to happen. I really don't. There is the off chance that you could get 5 edits in, and I'm saying the 5th and final edit you're going to want to do is after you sent off your synopsis. This is going to be done when you contact your very first agent that you have, and I'm going to do a whole video about agents. Agents usually take about 2 to 6 weeks to even get back to you, so that should be enough time for you to get in that last final edit, make sure everything is perfect, except for there's one exception to this edit. Your first 3 chapters, or first 10,000 words, whichever your agent is specifying for, should be perfected. Those are the main chapters you're going to focus on and make sure are perfect before you even send it off. So make sure, people, make sure. So you're going to want to do about 5 edits, and while, yes, that seems like a huge number to what you really want to do, you really only imagine doing about 2 edits, and 5 is frankly terrifying, but you want to do about 5, and when you think about it, it should only take you about the length of time it takes you to read a book. Now, I mentioned sending your work off to friends and putting up on writing sites, but there are certain people that you should never, ever, 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 ever give your work to. Never. The first people you will never give your work to. Parents. Never give your novel to your mother or your father unless if they are, heartless people and like to crush your spirits and your dreams. If they're like that and, they're grammar Nazis, then by all means, give it to them. But if they are not, don't give it to them, because what are parents supposed to do? They're supposed to support you and push you to achieve your dreams. And, your mother is going to sit there and tell you, oh, this is brilliant. Oh, this is amazing. It needs no corrections. It's awesome. That's what your mother's supposed to do. Don't give it to her. The same thing stands for any other family members, like your sisters or your brothers, your cousins, your nieces, your nephews, anyone like that. who will just kind of butter you up and just, feed your ego. I did, however, send mine off to my sister-in-law, who does love to read, and she is a bit of a grammar Nazi, which is a very good thing because I got my story back and it was laced with remarks and, corrections and things that didn't make sense to her and things she really loved about it. So that is very helpful. Don't take criticism as a bad thing as long as it's constructive. If they're just going to hand it back to you and tell you it's shit, then ignore them. Don't give it to them. The same thing goes with close friends as with family. Your friends don't want to hurt your feelings. They want to stay your friends. So they're going to tell you, yeah, that was awesome, man. And chances are they didn't even read it. If you are going to give it to a friend or a family member who does do these type of things, who does enjoy editing, who is a bit of a grammar Nazi and loves to read, make sure what you wrote is something that they're going to want to read. It's a genre that they enjoy, because if it's not, chances are they're not going to like your story and they're just going to pick it apart and tell you how stupid it was. The people you do want to send it to is, friends or family members who are grammar Nazis, English teachers, something along those lines. People who aren't afraid to give you constructive criticism, who aren't afraid to, crush your dreams a little bit to build you up and make you better. Writing sites are brilliant for this because you will get fellow writers who, we all know what the process is like. We know how hard it is, and, we know what it's like to have your dreams crushed, and we like to help each other out. So, writing sites are perfect for this. I belong to a site called Figment. I will post the link below for you guys if you guys want to check it out, along with my link. You can post things in forums where, people will come and review your work for you, but usually it's not for free. And I mean, it doesn't cost money, but you have to review one of their works for them in return. So that's usually how it goes. But it's a very helpful site, and if you are writing, come and, write on my wall, because you can't message, but write on my wall and ask me to come and edit your work, and I will be more than happy to. Now we're going to discuss the tips and the trades to editing. These tips are a matter of opinion and certain things that I've seen that some authors really like to do and some really hate to do, but, all together are helpful in some way or another. Where you edit your work is important. If you're someone who cannot stand looking at a computer screen for hours on end, chances are you're gonna want to print out your story and edit it that way. With this comes an exception. If you are someone who likes their story printed out on paper, because I know I do, it's something about seeing it in a physical form on paper is just, it's amazing and you feel so accomplished. But if you do this and you plan to edit it that way and you plan to also send it off to your friends in the printed form and your story is really, really long, I ask that you just print out one. You print out one and you choose a color pen and you do your first few edits that way, and then you can hand it off to another friend and they choose a completely different colored pen and they edit it that way, and so on and so forth. So that way you just have one big collected work of everything instead of, having like 600 pages just lying about, your story that, people are just going to lose, and, it's just one will do. There's a lot of authors out there who, when editing, like to read backwards, and I am not a fan of this. I tried it once, and it doesn't work for me because it's too complicated. Basically, it's meant to help you catch commas and the whole 9 yards with that. But what you're going to want to do is start on the very last page of your story from the very last word and work your way backwards. And to me, that's too much work. And I'm not trying to be lazy, but that's a lot of, focus just going into that. Try it out though, because it might really work for you, and you might be able to catch a lot of your mistakes that way, misspellings and commas and all of that, because you're reading it backwards and your mind's registering it and there's focus going on. And if you can do it, kudos to you. For me, I like reading out loud because I will hear the mistakes that way and I'm still focusing really intently on my story, but you're not reading it backwards and giving yourself a migraine. Reading out loud is, for me, the best way to do it, and I feel that everyone, for at least one edit, should read their story out loud because you will hear things and you will notice if something doesn't sound right, if these words don't go well together instead of reading it. Because when you read it, it looks good on paper. It makes sense to you on paper or on screen. But when you read it out loud, it doesn't. With that said, while you're doing your edit for dialogue, I think you should really read that out loud, because that can, for one, be a lot of fun. And granted, people will think you're crazy, but it is a lot of fun, especially if you have different accents going. Hilarious. But this way, you will also notice if the dialogue flows properly and if it makes sense, if it's, as witty and as funny as you thought it would have been, or if, something needs to be changed about it. And if you're doing it in character, if you're pretending you are these characters, you will notice if that is something the character would actually say, or if it's not something they would say. If you're just like, that looks really good, but he wouldn't say that. Granted, yes, people are going to think you're insane. My husband thinks I'm insane when I read my story out loud and I pretend I'm my characters and, yelling at myself. But I did catch a lot of my mistakes through that. My dialogue became a lot better. It was more swift. It was more punch to it. It's a brilliant way to go about it. And I don't think a lot of people really do it that way. So give that way a go, especially while you're doing your edit with the dialogue. I did say that your edit should take you about the span it takes to read a book. But if you're someone who doesn't have time to sit around and edit, 12 chapters a day, then do 1 chapter a day. I do about 1 to 2 chapters a day, and then I call it quits, and I go do something else, and I forget about it, and I come back the next day with a fresh mind. Because, when you're scouring, looking for comma mistakes and misspellings and all of that, you do tend to get bored and antsy, and you don't want to do this anymore, and you begin thinking about other things. So do a few chapters a day. Go walk away from it, come back the next day with a fresh cup of coffee or tea, whatever you want to drink, and get into it then. So this is the video to editing with some tips and tricks to the trade, and the next video I'm going to do is going to be all about your agent search. Oh yes! We're finally getting into the good stuff. The hard stuff is kind of out of the way. All awesome links will be below for my Figment, my account, and all of that, and it's free to sign up on, and you can post your stories, and you can't copy and paste anything, so that's always a plus side. Twitter will be below, which is really easy to keep up with me, and keep tuned for the next video about the agents. And until then, you guys,